The only way you're going to be successful is listening to your customers. This is true in any industry. Listen to your customers, listen to what they're saying, fix their problems, you will be successful. So if you extrapolate that into a leadership principle, listening is the important part. I'm listening to my customers, I'm also listening to my team. I have a very passionate, awesome team that has a lot of experience in the industry, and they know a lot of things and they're hearing a lot of things, both from customers, both from our partners, everyone else. So listen to your customers, listen to your team.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 122 of High Spirits. I'm Ben Larson, and with me, as always, is Anna Ray Grabstein. We're recording Tuesday, January 20th, 2026, and we've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking to the CEO of LeafLink, and we're going to be diving into everything cannabis, as always. But before we get there, Anna Ray, how you doing? How's your weekend going? Or how's your week going? And how was your weekend?
Weekend was great. It was sort of a 3-day weekend for many people. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and I always take that time to make sure that either I can give physical service back in my community or to make a financial donation to organizations that I support, or both. So did a little of each. And
Can I double click on that just a little bit? Isn't it a 3-day weekend for everyone, or did someone change that?
well, it certainly was a 3-day weekend for my child's school.
Okay.
As someone that works with many companies, I will say that some of my clients took the day off and some didn't.
Mm.
And I'm not really sure what the decision was of why some people don't and some people do, but maybe you have more insight on that. What was your take? Did your
I don't know.
company
My birthday was over the weekend. Happy birthday to me.
happy birthday?
But it was always around MLK Day, and I spent a lot of my childhood learning about MLK, and it seemed like a very notable holiday each year. I don't know if that was just because of my birthday, but I'm fairly certain, especially growing up in California, that it was a recognized and important holiday. And I'm curious, and we're not going to make this a political podcast, but I'm curious if that has shifted because of the current administration, because it does seem like it has been de-emphasized. And don't take too kindly to that because I enjoy my 3-day birthday weekends.
And truly happy birthday. I admitted to you right before this that I totally forgot your birthday and that Facebook told me that I had missed your birthday. And because I signed on to Facebook a day after your birthday and was prompted to give you a belated greeting, and I was very embarrassed. So really glad that you are entering another year healthy and happy as you are, and from a beautiful place. You were in Mexico last week doing all types of personal, professional development, cool stuff. So just
Yeah.
happy to see you carrying that on in every year of your life.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Yeah.
it's okay. I think I also missed yours. So uh, it's a good thing we're Facebook friends. But beside that, I was in Mexico. I was doing some relaxation, some vacationing, but also masterminding my life. And I do this every January, and it's just a great way to kick off my year. So get centered, really focus on what I'm grateful for, who do I want to be in the new year? What do I want to achieve, both professionally, personally, and with my family? So coming back full and focused, and I think we talked about this last week. It's the year of the fire horse, and the fire horse is all about focus. And I feel more focused than ever, knowing what I need to execute on. So, highly recommend people set aside that time, after the craziness of the holidays, after the craziness of getting your team up and running and off in the right direction, to take a step back and then really, really focus and making sure that you know the leader that you want to be in the new year.
That's beautiful. I love it. And I did not do anything quite so intentional, but I drove down Highway 1 over the weekend to Santa Cruz and also then drove back north to my home up the one after driving down the one. And for those that haven't spent time on Highway 1, it is a gorgeous road that creeps along the coast, all along the west coast from Canada to Mexico. But I was specifically along the California edge. And something about the bigness of the ocean for me just reminds me and reinforces kind of the smallness of my place in the world in a way that can sometimes be really empowering and help ground me in the ability to make small impacts and big impacts in our life, but just to remember that like there's a lot of things that I can't control, like the ocean, and
Yeah.
to let go needed.
Well, in Highway 1 is very indicative of that because depending on when you've traveled upon it in time, it has changed because the ocean takes
It's true.
the California coast. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a section when I was growing up that was called Devil's Slide, and it
Hmm.
was the section that would wash out all of the time. And now there is an incredible tunnel that they have dug through the mountain that replaced Devil's Slide. And you're right, it's about this kind of reinvention because there's some things that just keep changing. Um,
Yeah.
and so, one of the fun things that I was doing over the weekend as well is that my son started making these things called paracord bracelets. I've got one, I'll show it on the video. It's here.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah.
It's
And
quite the
para-
craftsman.
he's a craftsman for an 8-year-old. But
Wow.
paracord bracelets, I learned from him, are actually survival tools. And I thought it would be a fun thing to tease and talk about here too, because the concept is that it is one long piece of rope that's woven into a bracelet, but that you can take it apart if you need it. So that no
Hmm.
matter where you are, you always have a length of rope with you and that you can save yourself or others or do whatever you might need to do with an emergency piece of rope or fishing line or jute when things get hard. And I thought that it was a fitting metaphor for cannabis because I think that we're in a place where we need to be equipped with survival tools um, at all times because what we know is that the conditions aren't ideal. We don't quite know what's happening next, but we've got to keep equipped with all our tools.
No, we do not. I'm going to put in an order for a paracord suit.
So.
I'm gonna need a lot of rope.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so let's get into it today. I think we're going to be in for a great conversation. Our guest today is Ashwin Raj, and he's the CEO of LeafLink. LeafLink sits at the center of cannabis wholesale. They've processed over 5 billion in annual transactions. 12,000 companies plus use the platform. They're live in 30 markets across the US. Ashwin brings experience from multiple industries that scaled before regulation caught up. He's been in leadership roles at Lyft and Amazon during massive shifts and changes in policy. He also had executive leadership at EasyCater as well, and he's worked on marketplaces, payments, infrastructure in highly operational and fast-moving environments. He stepped into LeafLink just 7 months ago at a time when cannabis has clearly been moving out of its startup phase and into something much more complex, constrained, and demanding. So today we're going to talk about what that looks like. Welcome, Ashwin. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Anna Ray. Hey, Ben. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be part of your podcast today.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's really exciting to have you. Just listening to Anna Ray list kind of your background, it kind of sprung up this conversation that I've seen happening online where we talk about how hard cannabis is, and we were talking about the paracord earlier. Uh, and I've heard some people say like building businesses in emerging markets is hard everywhere. It's not just cannabis. Cannabis is no different, and we can argue in many ways it is. But I'm curious, is your perspective, coming out of Lyft, where that very much has been an emerging market, and you changed a lot of rules and all that. Is cannabis that much harder than what is experienced in other marketplaces?
That's a fantastic question, and jump right in. You didn't hold anything back. Um, it is similar, but it is also different in a way, because if I look back at Lyft and how ride sharing evolved, ride sharing when it started was not something that customers were very clear about. We've always grown up with our parents telling us, don't get into any car with a stranger, right? And it changed the social aspect of it. And then you had the established taxi industry and the medallion structure that had its own way of operating, and regulators and policymakers were used to it. Now, suddenly there comes this new technology, which is saying, I'm going to take these unused assets and I'm going to make it available to people to go wherever they want. And by the way, I'm going to get into a car with a stranger. So there was a social shift, there was a business shift, and there was a policy shift that was happening. And so I think cannabis is similar to that from those respects. And
Mhm.
I use my experience to think through how did they evolve and how did ride sharing evolve. When I joined ride sharing, it was pretty illegal in almost all states, and that there were cease and desist orders that different jurisdictions had sent both Uber and Lyft, and both of them reacted to it in a way where we developed the technology, we developed the platform to comply with the regulatory requirements, comply with the customer protection, comply with the safety requirements, etc. And that's how you convinced regulators that this was something that was better, was safer, and consumers wanted it. And ultimately, it was a customer preference that drove policymakers to also say, we have to accommodate this and we have to figure out a way to make it happen. And so cannabis has that same social aspect to it, where it has been something that's illegal. You're not supposed to you do it. I think we all experimented with it in college, but we're not willing to accept it. But now as states have started accepting it, I see it here in California where I live, that socially this has become much more mainstream, and it's getting even more mainstream. But it's not so in certain other states. So there's a social shift that's happening. The business model has to evolve, whereby cannabis operators are able to um, create a business from which they can make profits. And finally, policymakers have to realize that there is this shift happening, and we have to be custodians from the point of view of enabling this social shift in the right way, but also enabling these businesses to succeed. And I think that's where a lot of policymakers and regulators are. You can see it happen in the regulations in all the different states where they're a little bit all over the place. But that happened in ride sharing as well. That happened even with Amazon, if you think about it, with respect to internet commerce and the whole sales tax issue. If you remember, nobody knew what to do, right? These are all new technologies and new uses that are coming in, and that is actually the beauty of mankind and humankind, where new things will keep coming up. You can't say cannabis is new. Marijuana, cannabis have existed for thousands of years, but yes, the use of it, we put some policies and regulations around it. But that will continue to evolve. There'll be new technologies, there'll be new products, there'll be new things that people will consume and use, and we have to evolve with it. And so I think there are similarities, but I think this industry is also very different in the respect that it is emerging, and it has to uh, evolve and become more mature. And I think we are somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. If you just take, for example, the number of states where medical use is allowed and recreational use is allowed, we have less than half the states where recreational use is allowed, but we have about 40 states where medical use is allowed. So what is that inflection point? And when there is, and that happened in ride sharing as well, that happened in internet commerce. There was a point at which a majority of states shifted over into the new model, and then the rest follow. So I think there is a momentum that will happen, and I think that we as industry leaders have a responsibility to ensure that that happens in the right manner, where we are helping all the participants and all the constituents achieve their goals. And that way, you are then creating that right industry outcome.
Yeah.
You draw some really interesting parallels between ride sharing and e-commerce and cannabis, and you make this point that there ultimately became this inevitability with policy because of consumers' um, desire and enjoyment of the product, be it being able to buy products online or being able to get the car when they want it, when they arrive in a new city. But both of those examples seems like they moved a lot faster from a policy unlock than cannabis has. And I'm wondering if, as someone that was in the weeds in those spaces as policy was changing, if there was something that you see that the cannabis industry isn't doing to get policy to move faster, or what is it about cannabis? Because the consumers have clearly already spoken, haven't they? Don't we know that it's an inevitability that cannabis should become more unlocked from a policy and regulatory perspective, but the states and the feds just haven't caught up? What's the problem?
Great question, Anare. I think that I we I think we feel that the consumers have spoken, and consumers have spoken in certain states where they have expressed their desire to use this product for medical as well as recreational use. However, I still think the majority of the consumers are not as familiar with the products and the use around it. And I think consumer education is a huge gap in the industry. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I was having a conversation the other day with several friends, and we had these cannabis. There was a pre-roll, there were some gummies, and the issue was nobody knew what the impact of that was going to be on them and how much they had to consume. In alcohol, if you think about it, you can handle two beers or 2 glasses of wine. You have, this is 8% proof, this is 15%. That industry has created a standard and a way for consumers to know what the product is, how they're consuming it, and what the impact of it that will be. These are intoxicating products, but we have to accept it, and we need to make sure that consumers are aware. So that is one. And so today, majority of the consumers do not know the impact of it. And I think there is a responsibility for us to educate and inform those consumers. I'm talking about end users. And the second piece of that is, in order to create that education and to create that awareness, we have to make sure that we as an industry are creating the product standards, and the segmentation of it, and by the type of product. And we as an industry haven't done it. LeafLink, as you mentioned, sits in the center of this ecosystem. But I know that everybody, all the way from the manufacturing side, right, from the farm to the retail store, they all have different product descriptions, different. There is no standardization, and that is a big issue in the industry. And so this is where I feel that cannabis is not doing the right things, where we need to come together, and for whatever reason, we are operating against each other rather than together. I think that is a big issue. And if you don't come together, you're not going to overcome policy and regulatory hurdles. No matter what, if you take, I was at Visa, and there was this whole, Visa has this issue between merchants and banks, and there were a lot of regulatory requirements around merchant pricing, payment processing fees, and so on. I saw this with the sales tax issues with Amazon and all the other internet retailers. And then we saw it with Uber and Lyft. But they all came together to handle the policy issues together.
Mm.
And that is where the industry needs to come together. So it is a combination of things that we do, how we do it, and to create this structure and the standards in the industry that gives the confidence. Today there is no confidence, and we have to create that. And then secondly, we have to operate as partners. We can compete. I'm not saying don't everybody doesn't need to join hands and sing kumbaya, but you can compete, but you need to come together to solve these common problems together.
I love this. We talk about this a lot right now. It's it seems like it's getting harder over time to get people to come together. And as someone who's actually being trolled online right now by someone that is delineating between the plant itself and then everything else, I'm like, oh, that feels like a conversation that needed to be had like a decade ago because like
True.
gummies started becoming big like a long time ago. And I'm just curious, like, you're coming in with fresh eyes. What are some of the things that we could be doing to build confidence and come together? Because like we need it now more than ever. We have an ambiguous timeline for Schedule 3. We have the hemp conversation, which is all cannabinoids at the end of the day. And then to your point, we have a consumer base that still has a lot of questions. Like even my own wife like looks at a product and she's like, is this THC or CBD? And even that, like, I don't even know if she's asking me if she's going to get high or not, which is maybe a failure on my part. But I think this is pretty common as we deal with new marketplaces across the U.S. But it does feel, and maybe this because we're sitting in California, that it does feel inevitable, but also very far away in some ways. And so, yeah, I'm curious as to your kind of fresh perspective coming from these other marketplaces. What's next as far as that big low-hanging fruit of building alignment and building confidence?
As I said, one is the industry participants in various states have to come together, but then we have to create this joint across state way of operating to help with the federal policy changes as well. And I think that's just a piece that needs to come together in a manner where all the operators are engaged in the right way. I think that's a broader underlying theme, but very specifically, what I would say is, I believe, at least this is the ride sharing example. I believe that technology and the platform helped overcome a lot of the concerns that regulators had, because they were sure that you could put, if you all are well aware of this, each county, each city, each local jurisdiction has their own ride sharing requirements, and those are very different. San Francisco Airport has its own set of requirements, whereas San Francisco City has a different set of requirements. And every city in between San Francisco Airport and San Francisco City has their own requirements. And so that could only be solved through technology. And cannabis is still the same way, because you have different regulations in every state. At least it's at a state level. There are some local jurisdictional, distance-based limitations, but that's still applied broadly. Technology can solve that. And you need these participants to create that compliance, create that confidence in terms of these are licensed, valid operators transacting. Because the big piece that we are not talking about is that whole illicit segment, which is creating a lot of pressure and is also giving regulators the concern, right? That they are going to, that part is going to explode if they allow any policy changes and so on. So you have to help them push more into the mainstream, into this regulated way of operating. And that is through, leaders in the industry who are playing different parts of the value chain. This is all the way from Metric to, LeafLink on the wholesale side to participants on the retail side. And I think they all have a role to play. And it is through the technology and the platform that you to drive those outcomes. And then you need to take that to the policy because that's what we were able to do in the ride sharing and e-commerce industries, where we were able to show that the platform will help. And today technology is omnipresent and it's everywhere and it's used everything. So why not take advantage of this here as well? And the other byproduct advantage of that is you can drive more efficiency in our industry, which is margin constrained. And it's significantly margin constrained. It is because of the complexity of the regulations. It is because of all the 280E pressure, all of this. And so they don't have everybody's fighting for survival, that they're not looking at how do we come together. And this is almost like, I go back to the olden days, the pre-industrial days, where we were all small villages, each fighting for survival because somebody is going to come and take over and finish us off. And that's kind of all the way cannabis is operating almost today.
Totally.
And that can come through by opening up those, breaking down those walls, opening it up, using technology to drive efficiency so that operators benefit, regulators benefit, and consumers benefit, because now they know that they can trust the source from whom they're buying, and they get the right product with the right data, with the right information. I'll just give a simple example. If you remember the early days, you were not sure which car you were going to get when you ordered a Lyft or an Uber, right? You don't know what was going to show up. But then the standards were set up. There is a vehicle verification. You had to meet certain standards. My car, by the way, was rejected by Lyft because it was an old car, and they're like, no, this doesn't meet the standards, right? And so there's a level of standardization, and there's a level of checks and verification that come in, and that's what this industry needs.
Well, I think it's interesting. You're really pushing on this tech as this neutral and also incredibly critical infrastructure that creates confidence. And when legal cannabis started rolling out, there were a lot of, and continue to be, track and trace programs that use technology that are supposed to be sort of the underlying layer for compliance. And I think some operators at the beginning thought that the track and trace tools were also going to provide business intelligence. And that hasn't been the case. And they're not actually tools for running a business. They really are tools for tracking compliance. And so on the back of that, lots of new technology was birthed to support the infrastructure that the industry needs to create that efficiency and optimization on the technology side. And that's where LeafLink came from. And LeafLink is in the middle. You guys are the wholesale layer between brands or cultivators or manufacturers and retailers. And I think that it's a fascinating place to sit because you get to see how the transactions move, how much things are getting sold for in ways that other people don't. I'm wondering kind of what you see as the signals of industry health sitting in that position in the middle in this important technology layer.
You're spot on, and it's an awesome position to be in this value chain and ecosystem. And you're right, we are the glue that connects the operator, cultivator side, brand side to the retailer side, and we have the ability and the advantage to connect all those dots all the way from, I was using compliance and the track and trace, the seed to sale aspect of it. But the issue is not everyone subscribes to it, and they want to do it in a different way. And we have to educate them. We have to almost plead with them and beg them to say, you know what, we can make this very simple. We can just connect your metric keys to, and process this transaction without you having to go and do something else manually at a later stage of time. And I think there's again, this evolution and maturity that needs to come, where they haven't fully embraced the technology utilization and the use of it, and they're still operating in a very manual, inefficient manner. And I think that is one key aspect of it. And the second aspect of it, to your question on the health, we see this in different states. And for example, there are some states which issued too many licenses. And what happened was that created outcomes that weren't great for a lot of the participants. And you can see them jump in and jump out because they just can't sustain. And there are some states which totally restricted it, to very few. And so again, this is you can see the connection between how policy makers are influencing outcomes here. And the health of the industry in different states is very different. While California has been at the forefront, the health of the California cannabis industry is not great. It's various factors, but it is not great. And
Let me
we
jump in. When you say something like that, is that because you're able to see, well, an eighth of weed in California is selling for way less than an
that's
eighth of weed in other markets, and so I
that is
can
exactly right.
tell
There is
and
price
say,
compression. There is you can see businesses go. You can see operators going out of business on a regular basis. And we have the advantage of seeing it both on the marketplace as well as from our banking, financial services platform. And we see that, and we have a sense of, we can actually foresee that to some extent, because you can see the banking deposits just go down, and we're like, okay, here is something that's going to be coming up, right? And so it is sad to see that. You want to try and help in a way, but if they've already in that downward spiral and they're not making profits, they just are not able to come out of it. And I think that is a problem where not just the industry, but again, this is where policy is also super important at this point in time, has to step in to make sure that we are protecting, nurturing, and growing this industry. Michigan is a great example where I actually feel the opposite is happening of this protection and nurture, where this new wholesale tax that they've implemented now, which started on Jan 1, the 24% wholesale tax that was passed, is horrible for the operators. It is the it is not, I want to say it's the dumbest thing I've heard that somebody has done, but but people are not, policymakers are not looking at it to make sure that they are growing an industry. They're just using it as, okay, how am I going to siphon off cash from here to fund some of my public policy projects? And I don't care what happens to this industry. And that is not the right way to think about it from a policy perspective. Unfortunately, we as participants in the industry have no way of influencing that. We can come together, and all the Michigan operators have come together, and a huge shout out to them to try and take legal action against that wholesale tax. And I think that's very commendable, and we and other operators will support them, are supporting them on it. But that's going to go its course. Meanwhile, on day one, on Jan 1, we had to put the 24% tax into play for all those transactions that happened. That is the reality. And that needs to change. And I think that's where the industry coming together to head off and address these challenges is going to be important. Technology will solve part of the problem, but technology will not solve all the issues around this.
It might not solve all the issues, but there's a lot of power in data. And we had Cy Scott on 2 episodes ago, episode 120, and we were talking about, the way a headset looks at their data. And that's their business, right? Their data analytics. But transacting, $5 billion worth of transactions is also, there's a lot of data baked into there. And so I'm curious how LeafLink leverages that data to influence these conversations, perhaps. And do you guys put out reports, or, just being able to track what happens to the sales after you implement that 24%, like that's just very raw data that could be very useful in these conversations.
Yeah, we have market reports that we publish, the wholesale pricing report that we publish annually. We provide data to regulators. I don't know if this is news, but there is a series of activities in the Virginia market that are underway to consider a bill to be passed for opening up the market. And we actively work with regulators to provide the data around not just the it's not transactional data, but it is abstract the data in a way to show what are the issues with respect to, if you have too many the examples I meant, too many licenses, what does this do to the pricing? If you have very few licenses, or you put restrictions around delivery or cash on delivery restriction, what happens? We share those learnings with regulators, and to educate them that in terms of how they should be thinking about policy. And we do this not just in Virginia, but with all other state policymakers. And we feel we take our role of educating policymakers very seriously, and we use the data for it. But primarily, our data is meant to help our customers. Our data is being used to drive value to our customers in terms of how they can become more efficient, and both on the brand side as well as on the retailer side. Yeah, as you all are well aware, one of the biggest issues in the industry is this whole inventory management aspect of it, excess inventory and so on. So operators are trying, when they have produced too much, they're trying to get rid of that excess inventory. The industry operates in this, a relationship-based way, which is a good thing. But what the downside of that is, the brand reaches out and says, "Hey, I have some excess inventory. I'll give it to you at a discount," and the retailer buys it. The problem is the retailer is not able to sell that quickly, and now suddenly everybody's stuck. And there's not only an inventory management problem, but there's an accounts receivable problem. And so, how do you solve for this inventory management? How do you give the education, which is what Headset, which you mentioned, that's how they're thinking about it. But they're coming at it, they have to gather all the data. We have the advantage of having this data flow through our systems, and we're able to say, you shouldn't buy so much. This is kind of your inventory turnover. And so those insights and that aspect of it is what we are offering to both sides of the marketplace to help them become better and become more efficient. And the value of the platform is also that we can give them comparable products, comparable pricing, so that they can make better decisions that drives to what I was talking about earlier, the efficiency, how they can make the best decisions in terms of what they're carrying, how long they're carrying, and what they need to pay for it. And I think that's what it ultimately boils down to. And if we can make that process efficient, which, if you think about it, it should, the nature of the marketplace and the technology itself should drive that outcome. This is what happens in any marketplace in any other industry, whether that's Amazon or whether that's Etsy or eBay. The market addresses that those issues, but we are still evolving because we are a bunch of statewide marketplaces operating within that state. And so that marketplace efficiency hasn't come in each of those individual state marketplaces.
Right.
So it's interesting as you're starting to touch on the marketplace and the users of the marketplace. It's important, I think, for us to bring up that last year there was a big shakeup with LeafLink. LeafLink had been in a very strong position. I think many other technology platforms would have looked at LeafLink at that time and said, okay, these guys are leading in terms of wholesale transactions across the board. Really seemed like from the outside, as someone that doesn't work in technology specifically, that LeafLink was the leader in your space amongst a small group of competitors. And at some point in the spring or the summer, there was a major shift in the way that LeafLink was transacting with its paying customers in terms of the way that you guys were charging people. You decided to move from a flat rate or subscription service to a percentage of every transaction made on the platform. And it caused a massive uproar. There was lots of kind of pundits on LinkedIn being all pissed off, talking about this a lot. And also, very quickly, people started launching their own wholesale marketplaces. Competitors saw this as an opportunity because they saw how pissed off a bunch of the customers were about this shift. And so folks that were maybe in some other piece of the technology ecosystem decided that, okay, this is our chance. We are going to also now launch a marketplace. Or some people even started brand new companies to compete with you guys in the marketplace space. You weren't the CEO yet when this happened. You came on pretty shortly after this happened. It seemed like
I wonder
LeafLink
why.
was in a pretty significant crisis at that time. Yeah. And, so it sounds like there was probably a need for a new perspective on this. And I'd love if you could now give us, looking in the rearview mirror, some insights on what changed, what you learned, and kind of what the future plan is for LeafLink now.
Definitely. No, thank you for bringing up what was obviously a very painful part of last year, both for LeafLink and
You're
its
welcome.
I've publicly acknowledged this, and we at LeafLink and made that decision to charge a variable fee. And if you actually think about it, the variable fee model is how marketplaces operate all over the world. Every marketplace operates in a manner. So there was not something irrational about it. I think what took customers by surprise is the fact that the model had changed and they were used to treating LeafLink like a SaaS platform with a certain flat fee that they were comfortable with, and they were they could predict, and they had predictability and consistency to it. And suddenly this changed. And when I came on board, my initial, and the way I operate typically is I start by talking to customers across the industry. And that's what I started doing. And very quickly, customers were like, this pricing is a problem. And I was like, why is it a problem? And they actually raised the fact that there was no predictability and consistency in that pricing, and they would not be able to manage their costs because every dollar that goes through the platform has a variable component to it. Yes, you can model it out, but what it did is it kind of created a volatile pricing aspect of it. If they pushed more volume through, it actually worked against them. And that for me was the bigger issue on the platform. You cannot have a model where there is a disincentive for customers to push more volume through your platform. That just doesn't work. You want to create a platform where customers are incentivized to push more through. And why is that not an issue in other marketplaces? That's because they have the margins to be able to do it. We don't. We are a margin compressed, price compressed industry, and prices are further compressing. And so that is why that model doesn't work. And at this point in time in this industry, I do feel that as cannabis evolves and becomes a mainstream mature industry, there will be variable fee pricing. And today there is variable fee pricing on the if you think some of these competitors that you mentioned who are starting marketplace wholesale type are charging a variable fee to their consumers for point of sale transactions and so on, which is significantly higher. And so the model does exist. But we, as at LeafLink, my philosophy is we have to do the right thing for the customer. And the moment that they said that this was an issue where they will not be able to manage their costs and they had to think through what they were going to put through the platform, I said, no, that cannot be how we move forward. And so I made the decision to reverse that variable fee pricing structure and go back to a flat fee model. I also used the opportunity to simplify it into previously it was 3 tiers, simplified it into a 2-tier model, make it extremely easy for our customers to understand what they were getting in each tier. And we started engaging with our customers to, transition them into this flatter fee model. And I've gone publicly on record and apologized for for this change. And again, I'll say that to all our customers who are listening, that we're very sorry that this happened. But it is you have to believe in LeafLink and the leadership at this point in time that we want to do the right thing. We are willing to take that revenue hit and sacrifice those revenues for doing the right thing for the industry. And that is the philosophy that I am taking forward in the company, where we will always put the customer first. And we will make sure that if the customer is successful, we'll be successful. And once they become successful, you can charge them more, you can charge them less, that's up to you. But you have to make your customer successful. You can't put them in a position where they are not going to be successful. And that is what creates the industry. So that's the history on what happened. What has subsequently unfolded is a lot of the customers appreciated the fact that I was public about expressing my my apology to and reversing this and doing it very quickly. And they've reposed their confidence in us. We have actually seen customers come back. Some of those who took those angry knee-jerk reactions and went to other competitive platforms have come back to us. I'm not saying all of them have, but several of them have. And they've indicated that it was a mistake to leave the platform because the platform adds a lot of value. I will be very straightforward, and this could be, you may say this is being arrogant. We are still the best wholesale marketplace platform there is in the cannabis industry. There is no one that comes and has the level of feature functionality and capabilities and value that we offer to all the operators in the cannabis industry. And competition will always be there. We actually welcome competition. It helps keep us on our toes. And yes, we created an opportunity for others to step in. And if they have a way of delivering more value, that's great. And consumers should use it. But I'm very confident that none of them come close to delivering more value than what LeafLink does today.
I don't think that makes you arrogant. I think it just makes you a CEO. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a CEO of your company. But I want to go back to just like the price compression, the price sensitivity. It is interesting how that drives like an otherwise very obvious like business model. It's like we all use like DoorDash and we're used to paying like, but understanding that and understanding that's a key pain point of your customer. I'm assuming that there's a nexus between that and your acquisition of Dama Financial. And I want to dig into that a little bit because I wouldn't call it an obvious acquisition. But now that we're talking about it, I'm guessing there's something baked in there. And, Dama on its own was actually a really interesting, growing startup in the space. And so can you unpack that a little bit and just explain to what that vision was in the acquisition and the benefits it brings to the customer base?
Definitely. And again, great question. So the rationale behind the Dama acquisition is based on the core industry issues that I was highlighting earlier. I mentioned the inventory management, which is more of a marketplace issue, but the related issue that's arising out of it is this whole accounts receivable, accounts payable issue that has plagued this industry for years, is still a huge problem. And what we don't have is a way for confident payment, settlement, and reconciliation that needs to happen. So Dama as a financial services platform provides, core banking. And my vision is to create this digital banking solution for cannabis operators where you can do complex, even very significant manual tasks like your cash storage, your cash management, etc., manage it digitally. What we want to now connect it to, how we want to connect it to the marketplace is this whole payments, accounts receivable, accounts payable, working capital management aspect of it. And that, I think, is a gap that nobody has stepped in to address. Traditional banks obviously are not participating. The few smaller banks who are operating in these various states don't have the sophistication or the ability to do it. They lack the sophistication even to service just regular cannabis, compliance related to banking. You're probably aware, but every cannabis transaction has to have a positive paycheck that needs to be completed for it. Banks aren't set up to do that. We are able to do it because we've set up the technology to do it. So now if you think about it, you can actually track, if you take this compliance aspect of it, the seed to sale, which is the inventory flow, but you can also connect that to the financial flow. And now our platform offers that end-to-end compliance all the way from manufacturing to the shelf through both the flow of products and through the flow of funds. And that is the ultimate vision of bringing this together. But in the short term, the goal is to solve for this payment, accounts receivable, accounts payable problem, and to provide a form of, I want to say, not guaranteed, but a confident system where operators can rely on to receive their payments on time and to make their payments on time. And that is what we are, that's the vision and that's what we are building to bring about through this acquisition of Dama.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I was just, you're reminding me of some of the earlier days of dealing with some of these digital platforms, of like having to personally verify like the KYC. And since you already have verified users on this transactionary platform, you've already kind of set up that framework.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
pretty
right.
Cool. Yeah.
So as we're nearing the end, I wanted to ask kind of a different question outside of the financial services piece about verticalization versus specialization, because I think that where you guys sit too in the middle, both on the banking services side and in the wholesale side, you get to see a lot of transactions, money moving. And broadly, the cannabis industry is broken up into these groups that have become vertical from seed all the way to sale with cultivation and retail. And then folks that specialize in one area of the supply chain, be it cultivation or retail or certain brands in the middle. And I'm wondering if you have any insights into if one or the other is winning currently and where you think it's all going as the industry continues to evolve.
Good question. I wish I had a crystal ball, but I'll give you my perspective of what is happening right now. I think right now there is a trend towards verticalization. And I think a lot of the larger operators are taking advantage of this opportunity to set themselves up for a descheduled world. And they want to become all these large brands and MSOs want to become like a true CPG operator. And I think they're making a play for it. And the way they want to do it is in this moment, because once the descheduling happens, at least even if it's happening in steps, there is going to be an influx of capital and there is going to be an improvement in margin, which is now going to increase valuations. So the time to buy is actually now. And if you can see that a lot of them are making plays to buy up more retail dispensaries and so on. They already have cultivation. I have seen less of retail brands extending into the manufacturing side of it. So I think it's more of the supply, similar to kind of how alcohol evolved in some of the earlier days. But I think that's one aspect of it. However, in the long run, I don't think that pure verticalization alone is going to be sufficient, because specialization is going to win out. I believe in this concept of you have to stick to your core competencies, and one or two of them may become so good in operating that they have multiple core competencies and they can operate across the entire value chain. But I think that's only going to be not more than two or three. I don't think more than that will be able to do that. And so specialization is going to become very, very important. You become extremely good, drive the efficiencies in manufacturing, and you're supplying to a broader swath of operators, brands that are buying from you across the country and maybe even across the world, right, over time. Um, and so that sort of specialization is what will ultimately win. And there will be uh, room for both. But I do think that the more specialization that happens, consumers benefit from it ultimately.
Amazing.
Yeah, interesting.
And just since I think we have time for one more question, coming off my leadership retreat, I want to ask you, like, you have this rich professional history. We all kind of like start to collate these leadership principles that we believe drive successful companies or the cultures that we seek to have in a company. So I'm curious, what leadership principles did you bring into LeafLink, and the top three or whatever it is? And is there anything that maybe you thought was transferable and maybe wasn't, or something new that kind of picked up that is required uniquely for the cannabis industry?
I think the beauty of leadership principles is it transcends industries, right? That's kind of why they exist and, in a way, add value across companies in various different sectors. For me, the most important thing is very simple. I don't know if this is a leadership principle but this is kind of what I believe in. You have to listen to your customers. The only way you're going to be successful is listening to your customers. This is true in any industry. Listen to your customers, listen to what they're saying, fix their problems, you will be successful. I think so if you extrapolate that into a leadership principle, at least for me as a leader, as a CEO and leader, listening is the important part. I'm listening to my customers. I'm also listening to my team, because the team I have a very passionate, awesome team that has a lot of experience in the industry, and they know a lot of things, and they're hearing a lot of things, both from customers, both from our partners, everyone else. So listen to your customers, listen to your team, bring those two together. You'll be super successful. But I think the other piece just that I've brought over, that I've applied to LeafLink, is when you were mentioning this in your retreat, where you spoke about focus.
Mm-hmm.
I think focus is critical. I think one of the things that we didn't had lost a little bit was a lack of focus, and we started trying to do too many things. That is something that I've brought back into LeafLink to say, let's be extremely focused. Let's do one or two things that our customers want, that are high impact, and let's just prioritize that. And the third thing that I always believed, and this is the Amazon Lift aspect of it, is build for the long term. Always build for the long term, and make sure that something that you're building is sustainable. Don't build for short term outcomes, because that is not sustainable. So I think those are the things that I'm bringing from others, which I think are equally applicable for the cannabis industry, because I am here to build for the long term success of the cannabis industry. And my vision is that cannabis is a mainstream product, as good or even better. I think it'll be even better than alcohol as a product that consumers use.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah. And so, Ashwin, it is time for our last call. So we want to turn the mic back to you one last time for any advice, call to action, or a closing thought to leave our listeners with.
Again, thank Ben and Anare. Thank you so much for the time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about this wide and varied topics. The only thing I would I would ask of our listeners is, you heard from me. I've mentioned it, that our focus is listening to our customers, doing the right things for our customers. Please reach out. Please reach out to myself. Please reach out to any of our team members. We're here to listen to you, and we want to make this industry great, and we are here to support you in that.
Ashwin Raj of LeafLink, thank you so much. It was a great hour. Thank you for letting me jump right into it. We actually have this saying in the group that I was hanging out with this past week of like no small talk. So it's like just jumping deep into the conversations. I guess I was a little bit in that mode, so jumped
But
in a little bit, but you did great. Thank you.
thank you. You guys are awesome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Amazing. Talk soon. All right, everybody, what'd you think? Please let us know in the comments if you're on LinkedIn or otherwise. Otherwise, drop us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you to our teams at Vertosa and Wolf Meyer, and of course, our producer, Eric Rossetti. As always, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and keep your spirits high. Until next time, that's the show.